Morning, Luke. How are you?
Morning, mate. How are you? I'm good,
I'm
thank you.
all good. All good, thank you.
Good, good. Do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself and what's made you want to book the call? And I guess we'll go from there, my friend.
Sure. So I've seen several of your Instagram posts and
Hmm.
reels over several different months. It's only now that I really want to commit to doing anything in the property space
Sure.
because of circumstances and everything.
Hmm.
I was first interested last week by looking at the because I understand that you kind of run two separate sides of the business. There's
Hmm.
the rent to rent, which this call was booked off,
Hmm.
the landing page for and the data capture form. But
Sure.
there's also the other side where it's more about owning a property and then um, improving it and renting out as well.
Okay.
I, I'm caught in between what to focus on
Hmm.
because I like the fact that you would have an asset when you do buy a property and rent it out, and you can make changes and improve it and increase the value that way, as well as generating a consistent income.
Hmm.
Um, with rent to rent, it kind of seems like it's an immediate thing, which is great, and it's much more flexible in
Hmm.
terms of your outlay.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I'm pretty certain that it will be a lot more hands-on work because you are the middleman essentially between the actual owner and renters.
Hmm.
And I imagine it's quite similar to sales in that you have to pitch yourself as being the person to the landlord to trust, and then
Hmm.
you have to do that again with renters as such. So I'm trying to ascertain which direction to go in,
Hmm.
uh, and I'm open to suggestions and recommendations and what have you, because I'm pretty certain that property is going to be my future because of the the sort of the savings that I have,
Hmm.
the what I've inherited as well. It
Hmm.
seems to make sense that it's the best route to go down.
Sure. That makes perfect sense, dude. Um, okay. So two different things there, really. I mean, buying is obviously more like investing. Um, like you mentioned there, but obviously rent to rent is running a business. It's a property management company basically that you'll be running. One is probably better on the cash flow side of things in terms of making money each month in terms of profit. But then obviously with buying, you get the wealth element, so you get the appreciation as well, which you don't get with rent to rent.
Mhm.
For me, I didn't have an inheritance. I didn't have loads of money when I got started. I only had sort of £6,000, £7,000 when I first got started, so I didn't have enough to buy. So that's why I chose rent to rent. So it was kind of easy for me to choose a strategy. As overwhelming as it can be online with all these different strategies, it was process of elimination for me is all I had to work with, you know. So rent to rent was the path I went down. And yeah, I mean, still today, I still find rent to rent to be the best strategy in terms of capital upfront and return on investment. You mentioned that there's the time element of it in terms of like sales, you said. I mean, it can be quite salesy in the beginning, I guess, when you're like pitching your service to landlords. But like any business, you're going to have to sell yourself and present yourself to get clients. In terms of selling the rooms to actually find those premium sort of customers to come and pay you more, that isn't really that difficult because there's a huge market out there of companies and working professionals who can't really get a property from an estate agent because they normally want sort of 3 months, 6 months. Those types of tenancies, estate agents don't really tend to go with. They prefer like a 12-month tenancy normally.
Yeah,
So there's loads of working people staying in hotels, paying a lot more than what you would charge them, who are working around the country, you know, on different placements and things like that. So there's a big market of those types of people. It's just about understanding how to tap into them and attract them to your thing, basically, you know, your property.
sure.
And there's various ways that we can teach you how to do that. That isn't the difficult part. I'd say the more difficult part is just getting your first deal, you know, because there are a lot more people doing rent to rent now. So you do have to be one of the better ones to actually get anywhere. You have to obviously have your business properly built. You have to know what to say, how to say it, you know, and that does take a bit of practice. Typically, most of our students get their first 1 to 3 deals within sort of 6 months of working with us. but there's a lot of work that goes in between that period, in terms of outreach
Sure.
and learning the process. So yeah, I mean, for us, it's been fantastic. It's been great for a lot of my students as well. It's a business that can definitely build your steps into property. You know, I've found it's helped me a lot with like understanding what makes a good property in terms of buying in the future as well. So it's kind of like an opportunity to earn some money and also learn the game of
Sure.
property at the same time. Learn what makes a good landlord, and just learn how the whole thing works really, and also the skills that you learn from rent to rent when it does get round to you buying, you have this sort of unique skill set where you can rent your property out as like a hybrid, almost like an Airbnb, and
Mhm.
maximize that income with your rent to rent skills, because obviously you're attracting these premium tenants to your rent to rent properties, but sometimes there's like an overload of more people versus how many rooms or properties you've got available.
Yeah.
So then you can filter those over into your own properties and get three times more than the average person making £300 a month from a 100 grand property, for example.
Sure.
So
Okay.
great stepping stone, great way into property. It just depends how much time you have. Obviously, investing and buying is quite passive in terms of once you've bought the asset and rented it out. If you get a management company in place, there's not really any work for you to do at all. With rent to rent, most of my students are doing sort of 2 hours a day in terms of outreach and building their business out. And then once you've got a couple deals under your belt and you're making a couple grand a month, then you can start to outsource some of those jobs and focus on marketing and sales and getting more deals over the line, basically, without running the day-to-day ins and outs of it.
Yeah. Do you do both at the now in your position,
Yeah,
but you started out with just rent to rent?
yeah, exactly. So I started with rent to rent 7 years ago now, and then I just kept using the profits. I was working like part-time at the time, just doing a little delivery job, and I would save up the profits of the rent to rent business every sort of 3 or 4 months, and then use that to go and get another rent to rent deal, and then just compound it like that. And then around sort of 18 months to 2 years in, I had enough to sort of replace my income, but also I had enough there to buy my first house in Wales. And then I just
Okay.
built from there basically, rented that out. And then obviously since then we've gone on to buy more. And obviously houses have gone up in value over that time, in quite a short space of time over the last 4 years. We've had around sort of 30% appreciation in the area where we buy. So I've managed to get most of my money invested back out of those houses because of the appreciation. I've managed to refinance and get that 30,000 back out because they've jumped up by £30,000. So it's almost like I got the houses for free almost at this point, which is a fantastic position to be in.
Okay. Yeah, that's the dream really, to work up to that point, because then
Yeah,
it's the capital appreciation as well as being able to go again.
best of both worlds, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at the data over the next sort of 4 years to 2029 on Savills, it's the same sort of appreciation as expected, sort of 25, 30% appreciation in some areas, in Wales, in the northeast, in the northwest. So a typical 100 grand property, put 25 grand down plus some fees, you're looking at a 25%, 30% increase. So that same amount of money you put in, you'll be able to get back out in a few years' time.
Mhm. So obviously you do the rent to rent course, which I've watched the videos about, and
Hmm.
all your different students have started working up. Do
Hmm.
you do any sort of course or guidance along the buying as well? Um,
Yeah, yeah, good question. So, I mean, at the moment, we're only really focused on the rent to rent program more so, but we do offer like mentoring sessions, like where we do help people buy their first one or two properties. Like I've just helped a lady. She's bought her first one in Nottingham for 155 grand. It's like a two-bed terrace, nice little house. I've helped another lady in Wales actually. She's bought near my ones. She's on to her third one now, so she's got two on the same street. Megan, I'm going to be interviewing her soon on the podcast actually, so watch out for that if you're interested in buy to let side of things. But yeah, we do offer that service, but it's not like our main sort of service. It would be more of like booking separate calls. It normally takes people around 2 to 3 mentoring calls with me, where we sort of go through analysis, look at choose an area, choose a property. I normally introduce them to my mortgage broker if they haven't got a broker already, and then get your mortgage agreement in principle, find a property, and then get offering on a couple. And
Yeah.
normally within 2 or 3 sessions with me on Zoom, we normally get something over the line, and then it's just a case of waiting a few months to complete basically and get the keys.
Yeah. Okay. No, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Um, and in those instances, do you have like a list of approved contractors and people like that that you've worked with in the past that you share, or is that up to myself or whoever it is to go out and source your own and use those as project managers?
Yeah, sure. So typically the houses that we buy, we don't really tend to do like I know you mentioned flips and contractors and doing work, but we try to stay away from those types of
Okay.
properties just because I think the internet paints a picture that, BRR and you can get all your money out of these deals and it looks fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But what they don't tell you is like how difficult builders are to deal with, and how they're not really like business people. And they can create what we like to call in the business world operational drag
Mhm.
sometimes in my experience. And some of those houses that are like really cheap, they're normally obviously cheap for a reason. There's a lot of work that needs doing, normally around 30, 40 grand's worth of work.
Yeah.
And with the cost of inflation recently, with the building costs and the materials and the cost of labor, we have bought properties like that in the past, 50 grand, done them up, spent 30 grand on them, and then get them refinanced. But the stress of it and the time element of it, we're looking at 8 to 12 months before you've even seen any income, you're just paying into it the whole time. And then, things go wrong sometimes. And it's just from a business person's perspective, I just prefer to be a bit more lean with my model. And just every time I get 30 grand spare, I just buy a buy to let that's like pretty much ready to be rented. And the opportunity cost of not being in the market versus being in the market, obviously the appreciation you get from just having the property and getting some rent come in,
Yeah.
it just feels better, it's smoother, and I can focus on my other businesses as well, without having to deal with a builder that's gone and got drunk or has gone missing for the week and stuff like that.
Yeah. That sounds like a really practical ethos and outlook on the whole
Yeah,
business.
yeah. I mean, if you can crack it, great. I mean, like I said, we have done those, but I think the internet paints a picture that it's just literally easy. I mean, we have videos like that paints a picture that it's easy, but obviously a lot of that is marketing. Like the actual truth of it is dealing with builders and dealing with those houses can be tricky. There's normally some sort of charge on the property as well. Maybe the owner's in some sort of debt. They might have like a second charge with different companies on the property, and there can be it's just the time factor of it. You want to be as efficient as possible, and a lot of those properties make you become inefficient, basically.
Yeah. So I guess if you weighed it all up, that would be as much work as it would be running a rent to rent business, going from landlord to landlord, pitching to you
Hmm.
as a service.
Yeah, I mean, with rent to rent again, it's a lot easier than the buying side of buying a fixer upper because you're not really doing a full refurb. You're doing like a cosmetic refurbishment most of the time. You're not going back to brick and having to really call builders. Really, you're mainly just floating on the surface. So as long as when you view it, as long as it's the plastering's good, and if it needs a bit of a touch up with paint and decoration, that's more what you'll be doing with rent to rent. We never normally spend more than sort of 4 or 5 grand on a rent to rent refurb,
Okay.
just because you don't own the asset, right? So you want to try and get your money back out of it as quick as possible, and
Yeah.
it's not yours end of the day. So you don't need to be like putting in new bathrooms, new kitchens, and things like that. You just want to improve the perceived value, so you can then go and rent it out for a premium to
Yeah.
someone else. So, into comparing it to buying and refurbing and renting it, it's a lot easier than that. But obviously, yeah, you do have to kiss a few frogs before you find the the right landlord that suits what you want to do. And they are out there. Like I was just speaking to one yesterday, and I'm going to view two properties tomorrow with landlords who are very open to it, just because of all the new changes coming into play with the rental right bill. They feel a lot more comfortable working with a company rather than traditional tenants, just because they haven't got much protection if the
Yeah.
tenant falls into arrears. Whereas with a company, if it isn't working out, you can mutually leave basically after 2 months, 2 months notice. So it's a lot easier for landlords. They've got more protection, and they obviously have that guaranteed income coming in without dealing with singular tenants, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really interested in probably first and foremost the working with you to try and find places to buy that won't need a complete strip back and then renovation.
Hmm.
Uh, because yeah, that outlook works. I think that's really sensible.
Yeah.
Uh, I I am still interested in like setting up a rent to rent business.
Hmm.
It kind of I find it daunting because a little bit daunting because obviously it's going to rely on my drive
Hmm.
every single day to get across the line, but my accountability to show up to turn to do daily tasks
Hmm.
that I'd have to learn as well.
Hmm.
I like that, but I don't want to do that right now, if that makes sense. I
Yeah, of
kind of want
course.
to get my foot in the door with something that can start generating some sort of rental income,
Hmm.
then give me the confidence that like through that and having a limited company set up and that's all done, and
Hmm.
then I can start focusing on learning a new skill, which
Hmm.
would be doing the rent to rent.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, like,
I mean, it's
do you,
completely backwards to how you've had success. I
yeah, but I didn't have capital though.
Yeah,
So, having capital there sitting there, it's not doing anything for you. So you need to invest it either in an asset that's going to give you a higher return,
yeah,
being a buy to let, or you need to invest it into your skill set yourself, which will also give you a higher return because you're going to learn new skills, which are then going to allow you to make more money with your new skills. So you have to do something with it, right?
yeah,
And I didn't have enough to buy, so that's why I chose my path. We can all have different paths. Quite a few of the people that I have helped buy their first few houses, they're in decent jobs, quite busy, working professionals. They make good money, but they also realize that they can't do that forever, and they're getting taxed quite heavily on the personal income side of it. So buying in a business, buying assets, there's tax benefits to that, with the goal of hopefully replacing their income at some point with passive income from their investments, and eventually being able to retire at 35, 40 rather than 67 is sort of the goal for a lot of these guys that come to us. So it's still a great plan. You don't have to do it the exact same way that I did it. You can pave your own way and do it the other way around. It's totally down to you. But if you've got money sitting there, it makes sense to do something.
yeah. Okay. Um, okay, cool. That's good. And obviously, you got loads of information on the rent to rent course.
Hmm.
Do you have anything in terms of how, like, the timeline and how everything would work with the several calls that you mentioned and working
Yeah,
with a mortgage broker and that
yeah,
sort of thing?
yeah. I mean, we could send you an email after we get off the call just to give you a summary. But ultimately, normally it's about around 3 calls max, and it shouldn't really be taking much longer than that
Yeah,
to pull the trigger. Our first call would be mainly getting yourself set up, making sure your mortgage is in place and you can get your proof of funds and get yourself ready. And then choosing an area would probably be the second call, looking at some properties online. And then probably before that third call, it'd be good for you to go and do like a couple of days of viewings maybe in your area. It's good to definitely, for your first one, I'd advise you to go and see it yourself, and get into it and see how it all works and stuff.
give you that
Just to,
peace of mind, right?
yeah, of course, just to lay that first brick well. And then it's a case of offering, and yeah, I'll introduce you to the broker immediately, pretty much on the first call, so you can start getting all your ducks in a row and stuff. But yeah, it shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 calls to get you over the line as long as you're ready to take action. You've got the capital there. You get your mortgage agreement, which can take a couple weeks sometimes. And yeah, there's not really any reason why you couldn't complete on a 7 to 8 out of 10 condition buy to let somewhere either up north or over in Wales, wherever you choose to buy, you know.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm really keen, and thank you so much for being available on a Sunday morning.
No, that's cool, man. That's cool, dude. You know, no problem at all. Obviously, if you did have any more questions in the future regarding the rent to rent program, you wanted to get involved, you can always just book another call
Yeah,
as and when you're ready, you know, there's no rush.
yeah, I'm not ruling that out for sure.
Good, good. Okay. Well, have you got any more questions there for me?
No, I think that's all. I think I've taken enough time on your Sunday morning. Once again, thanks ever so much for jumping on the call,
No
and
worries, dude.
giving me your time. And I really look forward to working with you.
Yes, all right. Well, I'll send you the email over and hopefully we get a call booked in, you know, whenever you're ready, you know, next couple of weeks or whenever, and we can go from there.
Fantastic. Great. Okay. Thanks again, Luke. I really appreciate it.
No problem, dude. You take care and we'll speak soon.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Bye.
mate. Bye, bye.